Tamil receive. Okay, you don't pass them. It will be implicitly passed because this sort fun is a callback function. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. So we have slice, splice. I guess these are very easy. You can easily learn them on your own. You have reverse. That's something that you can learn on your own. Again, no, you should keep in mind that whenever you're working with arrays in JavaScript, it is deemed that you'll be working with strings. Okay. Uh, so that's why most of these functionalities may not work or have the same expected output because you are using a number, but it was expecting a string. So whose problem is it? So now that you know how to deal with it, you can implement them. So there are some new methods in ECMAScript. So in ECMAScript 5, they have introduced some new methods. You have something called as for each, map, filter, every, sum, reduce, right, index of, and last index. Although some of them are repetition, so you can see reducer and reduce right are similar, and index of and last index of are similar. You can try them on your own. Again, there are many methods, guys. I've only picked a handful of them. Why? Because these are predominantly popular. Okay, and you will definitely end up using them one way or the other. So what is for each? So we'll go create an example for that. Okay, and you have a small task. I'll probably take few numbers from you because I need some flavor. Let us go create a new file. Step 4. My script block ready. So guys, in the chat window, can each one of you put in a number between a whole number between 0 and 100? Okay, and make sure that those numbers don't repeat. And I will not take all the numbers. I'll randomly pick few numbers because see 25, 20, 25, 45. Make sure that you don't repeat them. Okay, and let's go create a variable. Fav nums is an array, and we start with 18. Type all of them: 25, 24, 45, 63, 13, and can stop. Okay, I don't need many numbers. We just need about 10, 15 or so. 6, 99, 3, 77, 100, 1, 2, 14, 72, and 49. Okay, I guess I've used almost all the numbers that were sent. Now let us say I have a requirement. Okay, sorry, I have a requirement to, we cannot copy. Okay, hold on. I'll put this on Pastebin. You definitely can copy it from there. From this fav nums, let us say I want to print all of these values. What would I do? I would use a loop. Okay, so one of the aspects that we are learning here is called loops. See, we have strings, operators, variables. We'll be covering strings later. We are in arrays now. And we have functions. I'll explain functions also in great detail moving forward. Now we are in loops. So what condition is something that we just use one of them, the if condition. We have other conditions as well, but if is predominantly popular. So we are now talking about loops. What are loops? So you can ask a program to, now what we can do is we can iterate through all the values. So because I have a loop, I want to, execute a console log message for each one of these values. So I'll now say console log fav nums, and let us say if I say 0, I would be able to log the first one. What if I want to get the log of the second one, third one, so on and so forth? This is not the file that I'm running. Hold on. Chrome. Okay, so it says 18, but I want to iterate through all of them. So that is where I can run a loop. So I can use a for loop. There are many types of loops. Okay, there is something called as for in loop, for each loop, You'll also find for off loop. I'll explain all of those different flavors when we encounter some example. For now, we'll use a for loop. So this for loop uses three different parameters. The first parameter is a initialization. So I go create a variable. I'll say I equals 0. So I'm initializing a variable with a value 0. And the second parameter is a condition to check. As long as the value I is less than the number of values that are in the favnums. So favnums dot length. You know the length is a property we discussed in the slide. Okay. The third part of this program is what will evaluate whether this, it will iterate. Okay. So this is where we have initialized. So there is a condition which will check if the I is um, less than the favnums. As long as this condition matches, I will keep incrementing I. So I'll say I plus plus. You know about this operator as well. This will increment. Probably did not install this open in browser extension. If you have installed, you probably have to enable it. If you have enabled it and if it is still not working, then there is a bigger problem you need to look for. Okay, but chances are that you have not installed this, or after you've installed, by default it gets enabled. For some reason, if it is not enabled, enable it, and then you'll get to see this. Third option, after installing all these extensions, if things are not working, just restart Visual Studio Code once, and then things will work fine. Okay, so now that I have created a loop, I should now be able to push this inside. See, because this for loop will now iterate for these many times. As long as this condition matches, it'll keep looping again and again and again. So if I go to the browser and refresh, I get to see 18, 17 times. So 17 times this 18 was logged. Now that indicates that this loop is executing for each one of the values here. Now, instead of 0, if I use the variable I, because I've created this variable I here, I'm using it here. So for the very first iteration, it will be 0. So is the I less than the fav number? The condition matched, so I will be incremented. So for the next iteration, this will be 1. Okay, watch. So if I run this example, you'll now get to see all the values. See, all the values are logged. Although this is a solution for this problem that we had, this creates a, what do we call this, as a optimization problem. The code is not optimized. See, if you thoroughly read this code here, this has several aspects to it. See, here I declare a variable. Nothing wrong with it. You declared a variable. In this command, is this not necessary for this statement to go and check for the favnums and find out what is the length? Isn't it? It'll go check what is the length. Then it'll evaluate. Then it'll increment. Then in the body of this loop, it again checks or prints this I. It is accessing it again. So the program has to leave this loop twice to go outside and check for the value and then come back inside and then do its process. So that makes this program inefficient. Now, what is the alternate now? In ECMAScript 6 or 5 was the first name, okay, and then later on they renamed it to version 6. What is the difference? 5 was introduced in 2015. 6 was introduced in 2016. So in 5, they had many options, but most of the browser manufacturers were reluctant to implement all of them. So they standardized it and they relaunched it with a new name called ES6. Okay, so ES6 is the toned down version of ES5. So is there any efficient way of doing it? You have a method of the array itself, which allows you to accomplish that. So here I can use the favnums is an array. It has a method like pop and push and slice and dice, sort. It has a method called for each. Now for each is capable of calling a callback function. So we can either write a function here, let us say function callback is the name. And now This callback will have a console log. I can now take this callback exactly like the way we did earlier. The sort was passed this function. Similarly, the for each is now passed this function. If I now go back and relaunch, so you got this hello logged 17 times. It logged 17 times. That tells you that this for each is calling this function 17 times. But now there is a problem. Since this callback gets 3 arguments. The first argument is the value for which the iteration is happening. Okay, I call that as val. The second argument is the index. I call that as idx, index. Not necessary. You can call that a potato. So there is no, again, see, in the previous case, wasn't this called sort fun? So you can call this anything you want. Okay, I call it callback because that's the relevant name. The third parameter is the array itself. I call this as ARR. So what is the first parameter? The value for which the iteration is happening. The second parameter is the index. The third parameter is the array itself. So now I can take this val and then I put that instead of this hello. So if I run this example, you'll see different values being logged. I mean, if I refresh it again, it actually in all the cases, it's putting all of them in a different line. So these are different console logs that have been executed. Easy. Now, how is this efficient? Is this function referring to this array all the time? No. It has an internal reference. That is because val is the name that I've assigned. So you can you can log index as well. The first parameter is always val. The second parameter is always index. The third parameter is always array. I mean, if I call this as index, I mean, see, the JavaScript program is not all that smart, correct? What is the second value? The index, correct? But I called it as val. So because I called it val, will it become val? No, it will not. It will still show you the index value. So you got the answer, correct? The first value is always the value. The second one is the index. The third one is the array itself. So I can log all of them. You have appropriately given them the name. That is all. The first argument is always value. The second one is always index. You may want to call it whatever you want. Okay, so if I go back, so you get to see all the logs here. The first value was 18. The second one is the index. And the third value is the array itself. What is the point of having the array here? You can use this array to implement another logic inside. So there are several callbacks, isn't it? So you can use another callback inside this callback. And inside this callback, you still have access to the original array. So you can actually make this example very dynamic. However, these are not predefined functions. These are not predefined. These are predefined methods, which will take a function. It takes a callback function. Any function is fine. This for each is a predefined method. Now, like for example, the sort is a predetermined method, correct? Join is predetermined, correct? So this join is a predetermined method which takes a callback function. So in this case, the for each is a predetermined method of the array. We are passing a callback function. Any name is fine. We have a callback function for each callback thing. But see, this callback function that I've written can be used with other, for each as well. Say, for example, you have this one. Let us say I come up with another double fav nums. And on this array also, I want to iterate. Okay. Then how? Isn't it? So you have this callback function which can now work for both of these numbers. I mean, of course, both of them as of now have the same. I will just to make it little interesting. I will shuffle these just due to generalize. Not necessary. There are some situations where the callback functions can be user defined because you have defined the program. So this callback can be reused, isn't it? So let's comment this out. Now let us say we had expectation here. Okay, I wanted to create a double the favorite numbers. Let's consider that as a use case. I have an array which is empty as of now. Let us say my intention is to double this fav numbers and insert them into this programmatically. Vaibhav, I guess your question will be answered. Just hold on. If your execution, the context flow, are we... Now, what I can do is I can use the callback. So I'll use the same snippet here. But see, my expectation is now different. Or maybe, we can go further down here and use the very native approach. So I can use a for loop. Instead of logging this, what I can do is I can say, hey, double favnums dot push favnums dot square bracket I multiply this with 2. Does that make sense? Now if I ask console to log favnums, and if I ask console to log double favnums, you'll see a difference, right? Favnums will be the regular array that I passed. Double favnums will be double the array. Let's go check. See, that was originally 18 and now it is 36. Okay, so let's now move on. Instead of doing something like this, okay, see, my expectation now is to get an array out of this computation, correct? Now, again, I had the same problem. So what is the solution here? I can use a map method instead of this. So what I can do is I can go use the favnums. Maybe what I'll do is I will also define this down here so it will be easy for you to get. I'll save this. So this var double favnums was declared here. Okay, so there is this double favnums. I want to fill in this double favnums with double these values. So what I can do here is this. Instead of passing an empty array here, I will use a method called map. Now what a map does, different from what this for each does. See, for each called a callback function, which did some job for us, right? What map does, it basically returns an array back. This array can be assigned to this variable, and that way your job will be shortened furthermore. So I can pass in a function. Instead of using a named function, I'm now using an anonymous function. Notice this function doesn't have any name here. And this takes 3 values, correct? So what are those? Value for which the iteration is happening, index, and the array itself. Now what am I interested in? The value. So what I'll do is I'll simply return this value multiplied by 2. So for each one of these values, it will take the value multiplied by 2 and add on to this. And until we have exhausted all the values in the favnums, it'll keep doing that again and again and again and again. And double favnums will now be an array which will have twice the value. So if I go back, you'll find the same output, just that this is much efficient way of working. So this is efficient. Now let us say you have a different requirement. You want to know if the values in this favnums are all the values less than 5. Now what is the answer? If I ask a question, are all the values less than 10 here? Are all the values less than 10? The answer is no, because 18 is not less than 10, 50 is not less than 10, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, there are a few numbers, like 6 is less than 10, 3 is less than 10, 1, 2 is less than 10. But there are few numbers which are less than 10, but not all the numbers are less than 10. So now you can have an expectation like, hey console, log me this message, favnums dot. You can use something called as every. Is every value, it takes a function, right? It takes a callback function. The callback function takes 2 arguments. The first argument is what? The value for which the iteration is happening. The second argument is what? The index. The third argument is the array itself. Now, what are we concerned here? Is every value less than 10? So I'll say, hey, return every value if it is less than 10. So what is the expectation here? I'm expecting every value to be less than 10. Are every value is less than 10? No. So this would return false. It says false. But if your expectation is, hey, are some values less than 10? So you can use some here. Are some values less than 10? What is your answer? Yes, because there are some values which are less than 10. It iterates through each one of them and then gives you a response. Watch. So it says true. Some values are less than 10, isn't it? So that's how you can use every and some. Now, how are they efficient? Watch. See, what is the question? Are some values less than 10? Now, is 18 less than 10? No. Is 50 less than 10? No. Is 25 less than 10? No. Is 24 less than 10? No. It goes iterating through all of these values. When it encounters this 6, that's wherein it finds a value which is less than 10. And once it has encountered a value less than 10, does it have any need to iterate through all the rest of the values? So this program will actually iterate up until it encounters a value which is less than 10. And once it has obtained the answer, it will not waste its time going through all of the rest of the values, all the rest values. Now, coming back to this, I can actually console log here and find out what is the value for which the iteration is happening. So you'll see it will iterate until it reaches 6, and after that it will stop iterating. It went until 6, then it stopped. If you had used the for, you had to iterate throughout, isn't it? So if you see that there is a great value in using these new methods. So what is the purpose of filter? So the purpose of filter is to filter out elements that you may want. Say, for example, this is the list, and we are talking about what? Filter, reduce, and index of. Okay, so these are 3 things that I would be addressing here. So there is my list, and I want to remove all the elements that are less than 50. That's a requirement. Okay, how do I recognize all the elements that are less than 50? Say 18 is out, 25, 24, 45, 13, 6, 3, 1, 2, 14, and 49. All these needs to be eliminated. How will I do that? So you can come up with a loop using the for and then some logic in it. But this filter is a fabulous method to work with such requirements. I want to now go create a variable, a list of GT50. Okay, it's greater than 50. A list of greater than 50 is what I have. This is the array, empty array as of now. I want to fill in all the values which are greater than 50 from this list and transfer them here. So I want to filter them out. How will I do it? So instead of using this array here, I can use the favnums, and favnums has a method to do that called filter, not filter. Fill is also quite useful feature. I suggest you can try. But see, this fill is meant for debugging purposes. Okay, fill will fill some dummy values inside an array. Okay, so I'll now use filter. Now filter what? So again, filter will take a function. This function will take 3 arguments. What are those? The value for which the iteration is happening, the index, and the array itself. Okay, so once we have passed all these 3 arguments, what is our objective here? We want to check the value which is greater than 50 and then put that in this list. So you think about this like a map with a specific purpose. So map would return an array, correct? So this one will create an array with the selected values. So I will now say return values that are greater than 50. Easy. Now that we have accomplished it, I will now say, hey, console log me this list of greater than 50. So if I run this, it will now produce a list of all the values that are greater than 50. There you go. all the values that are greater than 50. So we have only few values. If you see, greater than 50 is my expectation, so 50 is not included. 63, 99, 77, 100, 72. Those are the numbers that I've got here. Easy filter, pretty easy to work, isn't it? Now, in the next case, let's say I would want to find a sum. It works with, see, in this case, the greater than sign is useful for a number, correct? Let us say if this was an array of strings, I want to find out all the sales done by a specific salesperson, correct? Okay, these are made up names. Okay, so there will be 3 parameters passed, and I'm assigning a name for each one of them. What is fav nums here? That's the name of the array. So this filter is a method of that array. Okay, so if this was a string, all of this was string, you can use a string operator here to work. I have an array of values. I can probably send that to you and then we can deal with it. But so you can do whatever you want inside this filter. It'll just give you the matched outcome. Now let us move on to the next use case, which is how do I sum everything? So what is the total of this? So that's an important information that you may want if you are trying to create a chart. So I want to know what is the total sale and what is the percentage of each one of these person. So then how do I get the total sale? So in order to do that, how do we get the total? So see, this list of GT is the outcome that we have got, correct? So this GT can be sorted. How do you sort GT is the question. I suggest you can use both of them to come to a conclusion. So here I can use the sort. And we need a sort compare function, correct? Then how? See, because we need an array. See, on top of the filter. Okay, on top of the filter. What do you mean on top of the filter? So inside this filter, you mean? So this is list of GT itself is the array which has been filtered out, isn't it? Outside the filter. So now maybe you can come up with the outside the filter. What do you mean? So you don't want this to be filtered? You don't want this list of GT to be filtered. But as of now, if we try to squeeze in multiple methods here, because see, this is giving you a single value, correct? So those single values are accumulated here into this array. And this array is what we can sort. Now, no, there is one more option though, that we can come up with a method which does both of that for us, and we can come up with a function specifically for that. See, this inbuilt mechanisms do have some limitation, which you can do only so much of customization. Now, filter gives you a filtered array back. Every and sum will give you a predicate value back, correct? So each one of them is different. They have their own flavors. Okay, so now let's go to the next one. So don't generalize because some of them are very specific. So just think about it like the feature that method provides. So let us say my requirement is to reduce everything to a single value. Now, if you are moving ahead with React, let's say this word reducer will come handy when you're working with hooks and when you're working with state management. Similarly, when you move to Angular, again, this reduce will come handy. But I'll give you a basic overview of how reducers work in the fundamental context of how JavaScript implements it, and how the other frameworks will amplify this effect is something very interesting that you'll know when you learn React or Angular. So now, what if I want to reduce everything to 1? So the easiest way, with what we know is we can use a for loop, and then we can loop through all of these, and then I can put that to a value. So now we will see how to reduce this to a single value. Now, how do I do that? So I'll go create a variable called total. And this total is what? Is a number. But how do we derive the value out of that? We'll derive it from the sum of the fav nums. So I'll now use fav nums dot reduce. This reduce, unlike other methods that we have seen, will take two parameters. Okay, not one parameter. Like, this filter took one parameter. What was that? A function, correct? The reduce takes two parameters. It'll take a function and it'll take another argument, which is the initial value. I'll write some pseudo code here. So this reduce will take two parameters, callback function and the initial value. This callback function, okay, so this callback function earlier would take three parameters, correct? The value, index, and the array. Those are three arguments that were passed. But now there is another small twist to the story. This initial value that you passed here will be passed as the first argument here. Okay, or maybe I'll call this as init val. This init value that you have passed, initial value, will be passed as the first argument, then the value, then the index, and the array. So these are the parameters that the reduce method will take. Now let us see how that can be implemented. See, in the reduce method, I passed two parameters. First is the function, which takes three arguments. The second parameter is the initial value. So I will start with 0. So if you don't pass this value, it will take the first value of this array anyways. Okay, but then you are allowing the program to implement some computation. So it will take some computation time. So if you want to bypass that and make this effective, you use the initial value. Okay, so let us see how this would work now. So I'll take this parameters, I'll copy this as it is. So this init value is 0, correct? The value here is the value for which the iteration is happening. Index is the index and the array is the entire array. Now what I want to return here is the init value plus the value for which the iteration is happening. Now, how would it work? See, 0 plus 18 will be assigned to the total. The next iteration, 18, which will now be replacing the 0, plus 50 will be assigned. That will make it 68. The 68 will then be appended to 25, and then that will be appended to 24, then it will be appended to 45, and so on and so forth until all the values are exhausted, and then that's how you get the total. So let us now ask console to log the total. What is total? So if I run this example, you'll see what is the total. 661 is the total. Okay, it's very easy, isn't it? So you can sum all the values using reduce. So reduce takes two arguments. The first argument is the callback function. The second is the initial value. Let us say I increase the initial value to 100. Now 100 will be added to 18. Then the output then can be added to 15. If I run this example, you get 100 added to. Nobody will stop you from that. But that when you're using a loop, you are using some extra computation time, isn't it? You can convert this to a loop and then keep pushing all the values to it. But reduce is an advanced version. It can be an external value. Of course, it can be. Okay. See, I can create a variable here. It's an external value. I can take this initial value and then assign it here, isn't it? That would work. So I can come here and say, hey, make this 10. And make it 100. What do you mean in case of two external values from some other web technology language? Like, of course it can take. Okay, but you need to push that as a post into this page or somewhere, where this web page will make an Ajax call to that external resource and then load it. So anyway, how, if this page can access it, you should be able to assign it here. Or you can ask this initial value to get that from some external source. That would work. So when we learn about Ajax, I'll show you how you can access external resources as well. Okay. So in that case, we'll use some static JSON or JSON file or an XML file, but it can be anything. If you're attending the Node.js workshop as well, then we'll actually see. So let's go to the next step. So this is reduce. Now, as of now, this reduce method is starting with 18, then 50, then, it is moving from this order. But what if you wanted to change the order? You wanted to start with 59 and then 72 and so on and so forth. Can we do something like that? The answer is yes. So if I say, hey, console, log me the value that we are iterating for, it'll tell you what is the value for which the iteration is happening. See, it was 18, 20, 50, blah, 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 until it reached all the values, correct? It's the same sequence. But now, instead of using reduce, you can use something called as reduce write. What this does, it will start from the last value and then implement, go on till the first one. So it started with the last value. Okay. The output is still the same. Just that, the way you are reducing will change. So you have reduce and reduce write. So you have both reduce and reduce write. Okay. Try these out. Now you'll find these as a great utility when, especially when this array is dynamic. See, as of now, there's a static value, correct? This array is already predefined. But imagine that this array keeps getting a new value every few seconds. Okay, that's like a stream of information that is coming in. That is where, all these methods will outsmart all of them. So you select all the syntax that you would want to comment and press Control/, and that will, I think, it is Control/, will do a single line comment. You can also use Alt A, I guess. Yeah, it is Shift Alt A. Shift Alt A. That is about reduce and reduce write. So we are done with for each, map, filter, every, sum, reduce, write. What is left off? Index of and last index of. So I want to find out the location of 100, let us say. Where is 100? I want to know where is 100. Because sometimes, this may be a computed array. So I don't know where is this. So I want to find out dynamically. That is where, you'd use index of. Console log save nums dot index of 100. See, this index of does not take any callback function. Even if it takes a callback function, the purpose of the callback function is to return a number that I want to find in the array. Okay. So in this case, if I say index of, it will give us the index value of 100. Where is this index? Where is this 100 located? So it says it is on the 11th index. Let's go check. So this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So we found it. Okay. Let's assume that there is one more 100. I want to find out the next 100. Okay. So, or I want to find the value of this 100 from the last, not from the first. So if you go from the first, this one, right? If you want to go from the last, then this one will be identified. So in that case, you will say last index of. What is the last index of 100? That is from the last. What is the index of 100 from the last? So if I run this, it says 17. Sit and count. This would be 17th. Okay. So that's about all these methods. So you have for each, map, filter, every, sum, reduce, write, index of, and last index of. This index of will take two properties. The first is a search term for which you are looking for. The second parameter is from where you would want to look for. Okay, from where I want to search. Say, for example, this is a classic example. Let us say I already have found 100. I want to find the location of the second 100. So how do I find out? Okay, so I can do something like this. Index of 100. Now here I can say favnums dot index of 100. So it'll see, if you equate this will be computed first because this is an expression, right? So this gets evaluated first and it returns here as 11. That after 11, it'll start looking for the next 100. Okay, so if I save this, so it says 11, so which is wrong, isn't it? So maybe what I'll do is I'll cut this, put it to a variable, LOC equals this, and this LOC would be passed here. So this is the start location. I think, we'll have to add 1 to it so that it can start looking for the next value. If I'm not mistaken, let's go to that. LOC plus 1. So it'll look after that. Yeah, so you need to add 1 so that you can start looking after that. Easy. So you have an example for all these methods. Move on to the next topic. In the next example, we'll talk about array string methods. I guess, conditions. I guess, I'll skim through some of these topics because we'll anyhow be using these conditions. You've already seen me use these conditions anyways, right? So you know how to use a if condition. You have now while actually is a loop which takes a condition. So that is why I've put that inside this condition. But while is basically a loop. So while a condition matches, you basically execute some program. Then we have some loops. So you have a for loop, and this for loop is something that we have already discussed in the array, correct? But what if there is an object and you would want to loop through the values in the object? So that is where you use something called as a for in loop. So you have a for loop and a for in loop. Actually, you also have a for off loop, but let's just get these two examples out of the way. So this is step 2, loops.html. Okay, I have this array. I'll copy this code so that I don't have to type them, right? Avengers is an object. Okay, this object will have these properties. Title is Iron Man. Let us say we'll stick to one Iron Man as of now, okay? And then we'll use first name is last name is Stark. And then we have the city, and we'll have the power property. Let us say 7. Let us say now I want to loop through all the values in this object. See, if it was an array, you know how to loop through things, right? But if it is an object, how will you do it? So you will use the for in loop for that. So I can now use a for in loop. So this in is an expression. Okay, so it's a reserved keyword. So I can use props in Avengers. Now this props that I'm creating here is a variable. So I'm creating a variable called props for every property in the Avengers. And I would want to console log prop found. So I found a property. How many properties do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this console will now log 5 times. Okay. So if I run this example, you can expect this to be looped 5 times. See, we got 5 times. Prop found was called 5 times. So it is quite true that it is iterating through each one of these values and giving us this prop found. But what would be more relevant is, what if I wanted to loop and find out the property? That's the purpose of this props. What does this props denote here? It will represent the property for which the iteration is happening. Remember the val property that we use in the array? This prop is like that. So if I now say, hey, so it is iterating for title. What is the value? Iron Man. That's what I get here. So if I run this example, you actually get the property, not the value. You'll get the property for which the iteration is happening. That's prop simply means the property. So first name, last name, city, and power. So you'll get to see all these are the properties for which the iteration is happening. But what if I wanted to get the value of that? So how do I get this value of this um, title? So we cannot do something like this, right? So we cannot say, hey, console, log me Avengers dot props. This wouldn't work because Avengers do not have a property called props. It is a JavaScript object. It's not a JSON object. Now, what is the difference? Okay, so he's brought in a question that I would not usually answer. So I'll probably explain this. So if it is a JSON, the keys will always be a string. Like this. This is a JSON object. That's the difference. This is a JSON object. This is a JavaScript object. Clear? So as of now, this is a JavaScript object, which is what we're using. Now, this won't work because, see, it says undefined because there is no property called props. But this props is getting a new name every time. See, the props is getting a new name. It is title, it is first name, it is last name, it is city, and it is power. So we can run this as an expression like this way. So this props will be evaluated. There would be a value that is assigned, title in the first case, and then it will look for Avengers.title. So if I run this, you'll get the values. You get Iron Man, Tony, Stark, New York, and 7. So you're now getting the values. But what if I wanted to get both? So you would simply say props, comma, Avengers square bracket props. That way you will get the key and the value. Title, Iron Man, blah, 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 all of that. Easy. We'll put a colon as well. See, the logs now denote all the values that you have in the object. So this for in loop is useful to iterate through an object, and for is useful to iterate through an array. Both of them are collections, isn't it? So you can use them in your. The next step will talk about some math functionalities. So we have some math functionalities. There are frankly a ton of them. So we can find an absolute value of a number. So usually you'd use this to convert things from negative to positive, because if you say positive 5, so from 0, it takes 5 steps to get to the 5. Correct. At the same time, if you say negative 5, it will still take 5 steps from 0. Correct. So absolute gives you the absolute value, okay, of a number. Then you have round, which will round to a next number. So if you provide 5.6, let's say, and you would want to round, it'll say 6. Okay, so it'll round it off to the highest number possible. You also have seal, which does similar as round, just that it'll round it off to the next integer, next higher integer, and floor will round it off to the next the previous lower integer. And then you also have square root. You can find a square root of a number, and if you pass in several values, you want to find what is the max of these two values, what is the maximum of these two values, which one is more. So you can use max. Okay, so if you have 5 and 6, which is the max? 6, right? But see, that's something that you can logically tell. But if these are computed, then you need a method to do it. So that's where this math.max does exist, and then math.min. The min again gives you the minimum value out of these two. Then we have math.random. It generates a random number between 0 and 1. See, the reason why I put all of these in a slide is because, see, some of them are very useful, but they are different in different programming languages. So in some languages, they simply will be called rand, and it will generate a random number. But in JavaScript, it is actually called random. So math is a class. On that class, you have these methods. Okay, so absolute value, round, seal, floor, square root, max, min, and random. So I'll be using some of these moving forward. Just be aware that this is what they do. Okay. Um, so we'll talk about numbers. Again, um, we know about numbers. All decimals, floats, integers, everything is referred as numbers. And number is a constructor in JavaScript. Like the math is a constructor. Number is also a constructor. You see, you can use the number constructor to convert things to a number. You also have parseInt and parseFloat, which are methods of those numbers. So you can pass in anything. If you want to pass something to an integer, you will use parseInt. And if you want to convert anything to a float value as a number, then you will use parseFloat. Again, I'll be using these parseInt and parseFloat in examples moving forward. So you'll find one use case for that. So I'll not specifically create an example for it, but just be aware, and then I'll show you an example when we have a context. Okay, so when you are applying these operators onto things which is not a number, especially that plus and multiplication operator, division operator, which expects you to pass in a number and you did not pass in a number, then it'll display a nan.
Just a quick info, guys. Intellipaat offers a full stack web developer course in collaboration with iHub IIT Roorkee. Through this course, you'll learn tech stack like MongoDB, Express.js, Angular, Node.js, along with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and more from the IIT faculty. With this course, we've already helped thousands of professionals transition into high paying developer roles. You can check out the success stories on our Achievers channel, whose link is given in the description below. No doubt this course can take your career to new heights. So check out the course page link in the description and take the first step towards becoming a certified full stack web developer. Now that you're comfortable with JavaScript, the next big step is learning React. React is a powerful library that helps you build fast, modern, and dynamic user interfaces. In simple terms, you can say that React helps us manage complex web apps easily by breaking the UI into reusable components. In the MERN stack, React is used for building the front end, meaning everything the user sees and interact with, like button, forms, animation, which is made with React. It makes development faster, cleaner, and easier to maintain.
So what is React? Now, if you see on the documentation of the React's website, it claims to be a library. So there is a popular interview question: what is library and what is a framework? Okay, so I suggest you do some homework and then do some preparation around. But I would give you a brief around what is a library. Let us say you have some set of functions and objects that you would want to share with other parts of other projects as well. So you can group them and call them as a library. Okay, so you can use whatever is required for your application to be developed. Okay, but as a framework, you have some impositions, like you'll have to follow certain rules. If you want to create a component, this is exactly how you do it. Okay, but it doesn't give you an imposition as to how what should be the start and what should be the end, how you start and how you go ahead. But in a case of a framework, you'll have set of rules that you'll have to follow along. Libraries don't. So a popular library that was it was really popular called jQuery. So after that, React came along, but there are some frameworks as well. So Backbone was a library that was used to develop applications, but Knockout was a framework. Similarly, Angular is a framework, something like that. So again, Knockout Backbone along with Durandal. Durandal was a framework. So don't get too confused about it. Just think about it like this: a set of programs that you've written. Say some functions and some objects can be grouped together and called a library. Okay, but on the other hand, frameworks come with an organized approach. So you have to follow these steps to create a component. If you have to follow these steps to create a form, you have to follow these steps to make an asynchronous request. But libraries are quite easy to implement in a project. It doesn't have too many rules associated with it. But on the other hand, frameworks do have certain rules that you'll have to follow. Okay, in other words, libraries are not opinionated. They don't carry an opinion as to how they need to be implemented. But frameworks are opinionated. You need to follow a set of flow to achieve what you really want. So React is maintained by Facebook developers. Primarily, Facebook developers realize that if you have to create a entire web application, and if you want to modify a part of that web application, the entire page do get re-rendered. Okay. So instead of creating HTML content, they decided to create the content via JavaScript. That way, the references are easy for them to pinpoint and then make some modification. Okay, because everything is in the JavaScript. I'll show you a small use case. I mean, I'll show you a small example to illustrate that idea. Okay, but of course, React does something really great behind the scene. So I'll just show you a part of that just to mimic what React basically does, and how it has advanced from what uh, basic JavaScript is doing, which is what we as React developers would be taking advantage of. All right. So React is meant to create the front end. React is not a middleware or a backend library. React is a front end library. But with the intervention of Next.js, these React can also be created as a server-side implementation, which is you write this entire program on the server, and the server will render everything and delivers a HTML file on the client side, which is also referred as a server-side rendered architecture, wherein the code that you write is churned out on the server, and client only gets the HTML part of it. Okay. So again, to develop a React application, you need to be writing everything on the server side. Coming to the next point here, React is used to develop um, large applications. See, the problem with the large application is that it's like huge building that you want to build. So the first thing is that you'll have to have a blueprint, how you want to approach to build it, and then you go brick by brick, isn't it? So you go one room at a time, you build something, and then you build another room, and then you add another floor to it, and so on and so forth. So that's how you construct a huge building. Similarly, when you're building a large application, React provides you the same tools. So it kind of helps you organize the way you want to approach by componentizing a large application. So usually when you start a project, okay, if you are joining a team of developers, some experienced developer would organize this application to small bits. But my suggestion is that each one of you start working on a small project. Maybe any personal idea that you may have, just pick that and see how you can apply all the things that you're learning from this workshop. So what React helps you do is break a complex application into small components. So understanding the dynamics of a component, how an interface can be broken into small bits, is quite important. So one reason why I was suggesting that take a small project, anything. So you don't have to achieve anything significantly big. Okay, you don't want to create a clone of Amazon to learn about React. No, you don't have to. Start with a small portfolio page. Okay, that will boost your confidence to the next level. Okay, then you can mimic another library that may be existing, and see how you can find resources to achieve what these applications are doing. And React is very vast. React also supports other libraries that you may want to use along. That way you have access to around 200 different libraries. So what is React popular for? React's only objective is to build front-end interfaces, right? So what do you mean by front-end interfaces, and what does it comprise of? The front end simply is HTML and JavaScript and CSS, and which is what React is good at. React simply, it simplifies the way HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is written. It uses JavaScript to write HTML and CSS both.
That way, you will have references for them in JavaScript. So you will have variable names that you can target and then you can modify. Okay, and then the rest is that React also takes help of a compiler, which takes the command instructions from you and makes the minimum possible changes that are required on the DOM. That way, the entire DOM doesn't have to be re-rendered. That's the key takeaway of React. That's what React brings on. Okay, so React allows you to organize a large application into components, and you have a concept called composition. Composition simply means a component can be built with other components as well. So you think about it like this. So there are several bricks. They can make a room, and there can be several rooms that can be put into a building that can become a hotel, isn't it? I mean, so you see, there is all the rooms may look similar, but they are all in different floors, isn't it? So you have created components and you have created a composition of components. You'll find the same switchboards in all the rooms, isn't it? Uh, so all these switchboards are also components. These switchboards are a part of a room. And then there are a lot of rooms put together in a floor. And there are a lot of floors put together in a building. I think you get the idea. So you need to also understand that there is a unidirectional data flow in React. This I will be illustrating with some examples, but I suggest we speak about this several times so that this idea is um, really crystal clear in your minds that React follows these principles and you should not be overriding them. Although in this workshop I'll also be showing some anti-practices. They're not evil, just that as a developer I felt that sometimes you may have to bend the rules. Okay, so if you start working with a company, they would definitely give you a project that that will challenge React, isn't it? So you should know how you can bend some rules if there are a requirement. So React does provide you a unidirectional data flow, but at times you can override them. I'll show you in some situations that you can do, but I suggest you always stick to what React can do. See, because when you start working in a large project, you'll also be working with large team members, right? So each one of them, if you are deviating, it'll be a confusion for somebody else, isn't it? So I suggest you use whatever comes out of the box from React and use an external library to achieve what you really want. And React also has a UI library, which I guess I will be addressing towards the end of this workshop when we discuss about other libraries. So just keep in mind that React is a library developed by Facebook. See, it is developed by Facebook. It is also open source, but does that mean that I can download the React library, modify it, and claim that it is not React but React? Because my name is Vijay, I may call it as React file because there are other libraries as well. So similar to React, there is something called as Preact as well, which is a leaner version of React. So we're not addressing that, just to tell you that no, there are other flavors as well. So React is maintained by Facebook developers. They do take input, but you will not be allowed to write the code for a React library. Okay, you can make recommendations, you can suggest them, and they will take inputs. And if it is required, they will incorporate it. And React is good at DOM manipulation. Everything is a component. We follow unidirectional data flow, and React is meant for UI. Okay, so having this understood, I guess we can first understand what virtual DOM is in this workshop. We'll now be creating another file. We'll call this as step 12. All right. So React, when you start working with React, this is one term that you'll come across, that React is a virtual DOM. Now, what is a virtual DOM? Is something that we will understand in this workshop. Um, so basically, if I create a script block and if I want to create an element, not literally, see, if I want to create a button, I would create like this, isn't it? So this is a real button. So why? Because you can actually feel this, you can see this. See, there is a button on the screen, isn't it? So if I have to query this, if I were to catch hold of this, how will I do it? I'll first wait for this button to be created. I will push this script block after this button. That way, this button can be accessed. See, you're trying to access it after the button is created. Ideally, that's what you should be doing, isn't it? So I will say, hey, document, get an element by tag name, button, get the first one, because see, you are using this expression get elements, isn't it? So that would give you a collection. And for the first one, set the text content as don't click me. Save this, go back, and now if I refresh this document, it says don't click me instead of click me. Click me is what I assigned as a default value, and now it says don't click me. Or probably, I would want to assign this value here as default value. And if I run this example, see, it says click me. Default value was removed, or it was overwritten by this. So if you read about this, if you want to query, let us say there are hundreds of elements on this web page. So if you have to query, this will take us a long time, isn't it? At least, for JavaScript, it has to query all the elements and check, if that is a tag called button, and it has to filter out and get you the first button out of it, isn't it? So instead, if we do this virtually, okay, so this was a real DOM. Now let us go create a virtual element which can be accessed in the script block itself. So I can go create a script block, and I do that much before I want to attach it onto the body. So I can now go and say var, or let also is fine. You can use let or var, whatever. I'll say var btn equals document dot create element. So I'm now creating an element button. So what is this variable btn? This is also a button. You can access all the properties, just that we will not be able to see anything here. This does exist virtually. You can access all the properties of that. So I'll say btn dot, let us say add event listener. I want to listen to the click event, and when the click happens, I want to call a function, and this function probably will say you click me. You click the button. See, this button is virtually existing. We've also attached an event listener, but this is not really available. Now, how will you make it really available? Or how do you make it literally available so that the user can actually, interact with this component? See, somewhere you'll have to put it on this HTML, isn't it? Only then you can see it. But so how do I add this into the body tag? So, earlier we used to do something like this in the very first version of React. We used to, not only in React, okay, but with other libraries as well. So we used to say, hey, document dot body. So this is how, you can quickly access the body. And then I can say dot inner HTML equals btn. Or in this case, I want to append a child. So I can say dot append child btn. So if you have attended my previous workshop, can you guys let me know if this would work? Will this put the button in the body? What do you think? See, body was created in line 15. We started accessing it in line number 12. So this won't be available. Let us give it a try and see what is the error. See, if I now go to inspect and do a console log, it says cannot read property of null reading append child. So translating it to simple English, it says cannot read a property called append child on something which is null, which doesn't exist. Now we'll have to delay the execution of this line, isn't it? So how do we do that? We will wrap this into a document dot add event listener, listen to the DOM content loaded, and then we'll call a function, and inside this function we will add this. Oops. So if I run this example, this will now put a puny button. You see there's a puny button here, this one. There is no value in the button. So you see that this button exists. So if I click on it, it does give me the output. So this virtual element